Hello folks, old Buster coming to you again now. Got another little story or two. We're going to try to get ahead of the game a little bit on a few stories of recording these things. You know, the holidays here is happening. Me and Lulu, we trying to get all this done for you. Just want to say howdy to everybody. I don't know how many folks are listening to the stories now, but anybody that does, I want you to know I appreciate them and hope you keep listening to them, that you get a chuckle out of some of them, and that they're an enjoyment to you. Well, we got several of them we're going to try to get done here today, and we're going to start with one called Lazy Days. And by the way, I hope you all had a very Merry Christmas and celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, because without Him, would none of us make it. Something had to make something, didn't it? Had that kind of power, can do anything to create. And a Happy New Year coming up. Hope it's going to be helpful to you and that you're successful and everybody's happy. That's what we all want. You know, old Buster's lived by two words all his life. That's just called do right now. We just all want to do right. All right, lazy days. Well, what you doing, Jesse? Queried Buster. Oh, just a lazing through the day, Jesse said. Just didn't want to be doing nothing but relaxing like. Well, Buster met up with Jesse down by the creek, running into Indian Bayou on Buster's Grandpa Gus's farm. Well, Jesse asked Buster if Howard and Walter was a-coming, and Buster told him they was in a bit. Well, Jesse asked Buster that if you ever had one of them days where you just didn't want to do anything but just enjoy the sunshine like a pig, with no worries or chores to do. Well, Buster allowed he did, and this was a right pretty day to do it now. Well, Jesse and Buster napped a bit in the sunshine of the Sunday afternoon and talked of days and adventures they done had in the past and what they might do in the future. Well, Walter and Howard come on by about then and brung some victuals their ma's put up for the boys and several sack lunches. Now, they knowed Buster would eat pretty near everything if they didn't send plenty, so they weighed down old Walter and Howard with cold fried chicken, homemade rolls, coleslaw, baked beans, fresh plum jam now, corn on the cob, fried peach pie, which is one of Buster's dearly favorite pies to eat, along with the pecan pie and a sweet tater pie for short. Had an apple pie and some roast pork sandwiches. Had some fried tater cakes, black-eyed peas, and some goulash to boot. Just a little bit of everything, like a buffet, they call it. Well, Buster started the fire when they got there, and the coals were just right for the homemade Polish sausages he brung from the house. Buster's grandpa put them up himself. He also had half a dozen smoked ham sandwiches his grandma put together for him. One of their hams they smoked, hickory smoked, sugar cured. But for the most part, him and the boys just laid out like pigs in the sunshine, like I said, and rested and visited. Well, after a bit, Howard done asked Jesse if he'd heard from Bebe. He said he had in a letter just this past Saturday, and she was doing some kind of special project down south and would stop by to see him when she was done. Well, I'm going to stop here just a bit, folks, and tell you now, I haven't read you a cast of characters, and I'm going to do that later on, all through the stories. As well, there's some names you haven't heard before, because the adventures the boys had, they hadn't been read to you yet. So you're just going to have to recollect on them and see what they got to allow, and then see if you can't put it all together like a big old puzzle. Now, I try to do that, but sometimes it don't work, so just bear with me on the names. Well, she wrote and told him, that's Bebe that is, that she was going to go back to school for some special training and would fill him in when she come. Well, Jesse said they was close but not 100% committed, but who knowed what would happen in the future. But she would always be right special to him no matter what. Said he was right partial to her, but they all knowed he had some things to do in his life that didn't include no wife, and at this time, he wouldn't know what to do with her if he got her. Well, Walter told them all some news he done found out about his and great-great-great-grandpa. Said Lou Ann's great-great-great-grandpa done shot and killed his grandpa there in New Mexico. Billy was up on the balcony when Sheriff Bob come out of the saloon there and shot him dead in a doornail. Walter allowed that's the reason none of the family was in the law business, because of Bob being killed and all. Now, ain't that a hoot, said Howard. Now, you ain't mad at Lou Ann now, are you, Walter? Walter said, heck no, she didn't shoot him. Well, all the boys just laughed at it, and I tell you. Well, you know who Billy was, don't you? That's Billy the Kid. Now, Walter had a way with the women, too, and it wasn't his and pheromones like Jesse. It was his and grinning and a talking that done it. It was just his and way. Well, Buster was the one that could talk. If'n you had a knowed him when he was a littlin', you would have never guessed old Buster was so shy as a youngin'. He ain't no more, that's for sure. Fact is, he riles up higher's natural devilment in him, and he is worser than Walter sometimes when it comes to being a trickster. Whilst they was a lollygagging round there, Buster throwed out an idea for 'em to build both a tree house and a cave in the bank of the creek so they'd have a place to relax on the creek. The swimming hole was there, and fishing was good too, so why not? Frog gigging and hunting was done on the bayou, on one of Grandpa Gus's grandpa's rice fields, which he done inherited that part of it, on the east side. Heck, they learned how to do so much in the explorers, and from their folks it'd be fun and a snap to get her done real quick like. Oh boy, to hear that back there old computer coming alive. Guess somebody wants to talk to us. Anyhow, Buster said he was going to build him an outhouse too. Walter said he'd better build the stew plenty stout as big as he was, or he might just fall on in. Well, Buster had the notion to use the bark they could strip off of the trees and binding material, and between their hatchets and knives they had all the tools they needed. Rough it like them fellers done in the movie reels. Well, whilst they was a-talking, Hired told the boys him and that Snow gal, that's Alma May, you know, was a-getting pretty cozy, but his pa said they was going to have to move off to Colorado for a few months next year, and he wasn't going to go to college till he come back. Well, his and Ma and Pa said he could stay behind with one of the boys if he wanted to, but it was up to him. Seems how his and Ma done spoke to the boys' balls at their quilting bee last week about it all, and all of them said it weren't no trouble if Hired wanted to stay with any of them. Reckon they all would chew on that for a while before a decision was made. I guess like Grandpa said, they'd take it to the couch. Well, Hired said maybe he could stay up there a while and back down here a while too. He said the boys could come backwards and farmers with him, and they could have some fun up in them there mountains and do some visiting with folks they needed to catch up with. Well, all the boys agreed life was a-changing fast, but they still had a little time before it all went in different directions. Growing up just wasn't as easy thing to do as you think sometime. As close as all of them was, the time was a-coming where they'd be separated, and that would be hard on each and every one of them. Kinda scary and sad at the same time, but finding out what was in store for them all was exciting too. Them boys had lots of adventures to get into now. Well, Buster, Jesse, Walter, and Hired made a pact on a solemn oath to always be there for each other, no matter what. They all knowed when they married up and had young'uns of their own that life would be a different thing, and hopefully they could keep them bonds of brotherhood strong and intact no matter the distance. Now, life has a dynamic of its own, and all their folks knowed that, and it was bound to come, and sooner than you thought. Well, Hired allowed that there was more adventures to come their way, but would probably just involve more folks like wives and young'uns and in-laws and new friends and whatnot. But never would a time come that it would take the place of their union, they all vowed. Well, just talking and a-thinking and relaxing with best friends was a blessing from the Lord for sure. Especially this here Sunday. It all was a-coming full circle. That was all well and good, but Buster told 'em, let's eat. Now, Buster loved to make fire, so he stoked the fire up and victuals was laid out. Whilst they was enjoying the afternoon, the wonder of nature showed her bounty. A mama mallard swam by with her ducklings, and an owl hooted way up in that white oak tree, and rabbits was a-scurrying about. The creek was a-playing its melody, a-trickling over the rocks and spilling over the beaver dam, and a covey of bobwhites was a-feeding out near the loading area for where the grain fell down there last fall when they was cutting it. Their call was always special to Buster, and a breeze rustling through the leaves was right peaceful like. It was a good day, they all allowed, and a blessing to be alive. Now, good raising by good folks for the boys set 'em up for life's journey. Being teenagers and almost grown men was the most exciting times of their lives, and they knowed there was more to come, but today it was just them, together, awaiting for a new day to dawn. You know, Buster was the only one that didn't really have no certain gal. He was a sparkin'. Oh, he went out with lots of them, but he just ain't got round to one that buttered his and bread yet. I reckon that day would come soon enough. As you well know, Lulu come into his life later on. It was going to be a sight to see what all them boys done when they got out there on their own. Now, they all come into money, and that dang computer business Jesse put money in was a-doing right well. Something, M or something like that, MS, it was called. All the other business dealings was a-making money too, and the feller they hired to oversee it for them and their families was doing a bang-up job. Now, old McBrayer Whiskey was aces in the whiskey world, and Aunt Judith was still a-holding her own there. Now, Elizabeth Jane was another matter, though. That feller she wants to marry up with ain't a-going to be good for her, they don't think. The wedding was to be in June, and Mr. Hiram Holmes and Dalton flew over to England and took Aunt Judith with them for a talk to her. Well, Elizabeth Jane postponed the wedding for the next June till they had time to figure out which side that Freeman boy was on. Now, Elizabeth dearly loved that boy, but she knowed that Aunt Judith and Mr. Holmes wasn't going to lie to her none about him. Now, Mr. Holmes and Dalton said to let them get the skinny on him and just watch what he done for a spell, and then they would all have a confab face to face. Well, the next thing the boys wanted to do was to go see the folks they promised to visit on their trip traveling the country. They wasn't making plans to do that, but ain't set a date to go yet. Well, Buster had to devil Jesse a mite and said to him if and he remembered when they was in South America and when he first met BB and Cayenne at Harry's bar. Well, Jesse said, sure enough, why? Well, Buster said, a-grinning at Walter and Jesse, when them pheromones of yourn took a hold of BB, what was you thinking? Well, Jesse, he didn't rightly know, excepting he knowed he reckoned he needed to find a corn crib or a cornfield summers. He said he just didn't need no problems with women right then. Well, how was it when you first had to pucker up and smooch her, said Walter. Well, Walter done got into the swing of things now, and Hired was ready to join in too. Well, Jesse done turned redder than a beet and said it just kind of come natural like, but she done most of the leading in that department. Oh, that boy's a mess. Walter said, now, Jesse, you're going to have to step up to the plate because them gals want to be having a man to be the one to crank up that romance to high gear. Well, Jesse said he just didn't have a chance because of his pheromones and all the gals he'd been with done everything. They just didn't give him a chance. Well, Hired said you just might be a bit slow, Jesse, coming out the starting blocks. Well, you got to step up the pace some there, feller. Well, Jesse allowed that might be the case, and he was going to go to a doctor and see just what could be done about his pheromones. It was plumb awful to have to be worried about some gal hugging and kissing on him all the time. You just never knowed when it was going to happen. Well, all the boys just howled, I'm a-telling you. This is one trick they pulled on Jesse that has lasted for so long it would have took to be truth. One of these days they have to fess up to Jesse to keep him from fretting so much. But till then, them pheromones was going to just keep on bringing the gals to him like flies to honey. Now, you know that all started with Buster funning him about that, but it come to find out, if you remember in one of the stories, that them chemistry boys at the University of Alabama done found out there's such a thing as them pheromones. Well, the boys stayed out late and watched the stars in the night sky. It was clear as a bell and they seed a shooting star or two. It was a grand time to be alive and the boys took hands as brothers. Life was good. Y'all have a blessed day now. Old Buster just leaving you.